Imagine a place hidden deep in the desert, untouched for thousands of years, holding secrets that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about one of history's most famous journeys. A place where stones bear the marks of fire, where a massive rock stands split in two as if by an unimaginable force, and where ancient carvings whisper the stories of a people long gone. Now imagine this discovery wasn't made by religious scholars seeking to prove their faith, but by a team of atheist scientists, armed only with curiosity and the tools of modern research. What they uncovered matches one of the most famous accounts in human history with astonishing precision. Every detail, every burn mark, every carving, every geological anomaly seems to align with the ancient story of the Exodus. Could this barren, windswept mountain in Saudi Arabia truly be the legendary Mount Sinai? Or is it an incredible coincidence, waiting for someone brave enough to follow the evidence wherever it leads? Today, you're going to step into the heart of this discovery. You'll see what they saw, feel the weight of the evidence, and be challenged to decide for yourself. So stay with us until the very end, because the deeper we go, the more the desert will reveal. This is not just a story about the past, it's about the clash between belief and skepticism, and the truth that can unite them both. The discovery began in the most unexpected way, not by theologians on a pilgrimage, but by a small group of atheist scientists whose sole purpose was to study unusual geological formations in the Arabian Peninsula. These were people who had spent their lives in academia, committed to explaining the world through data, analysis, and rational interpretation. They didn't set out to confirm any ancient text or religious belief. If anything, they were determined to challenge those claims with what they believed to be the cold, unshakable lens of science. Their funding came from an international research foundation interested in mapping and studying desert formations, erosion patterns, and seismic history. They had heard of a remote, largely unexplored region in northwest Saudi Arabia, one that had been sealed off by the government, with very few outsiders permitted entry. To them, it was an irresistible scientific challenge. They managed to obtain special permits for what was officially labeled a geological and environmental survey. The group came equipped with advanced tools, high-resolution satellite imaging, portable spectrometers, drone mapping systems, and 3D modeling equipment. Everything about the mission was grounded in technology and precision, with no expectation of stumbling into anything beyond the scope of their discipline. However, as they trekked deeper into the desert, their expectations began to unravel. They encountered landscapes unlike anything they had ever documented before, formations that didn't align neatly with natural erosion or volcanic activity. It was here that they noticed a massive, darkened mountain rising from the horizon. The peak seemed charred black, but the burn marks were oddly localized and didn't match any recent volcanic record. This anomaly piqued their curiosity, but they pressed on, still convinced there had to be a purely geological explanation. Over the next several days, their findings grew increasingly bizarre. Rock samples revealed unusual thermal signatures. Carved shapes and unnatural alignments appeared in places where no ancient settlements were recorded. Some structures looked intentionally placed, as if by human hands thousands of years ago. The more they explored, the more their instruments confirmed that what they were seeing could not be dismissed as coincidence. Members of the team, once dismissive of anything religious, began whispering among themselves about how eerily similar these sites were to stories they had heard growing up but had long rejected. What began as a detached scientific expedition was turning into a confrontation with something they never thought they would consider: physical traces that mirrored one of the most famous events in ancient scripture. When the scientists reached the base of the mysterious mountain, one feature immediately caught their attention. The summit appeared unnaturally scorched. The darkened rock was not simply covered in soot or surface debris. It was blackened deep into its structure, as if it had been subjected to extreme, sustained heat. Using portable spectrometers, they analyzed the composition and discovered that the discoloration wasn't the result of natural volcanic activity or wildfire residue. The mineral structure had undergone a transformation consistent with exposure to temperatures far higher than anything caused by lightning strikes or atmospheric events. To their astonishment, the blackened top sharply contrasted with the lighter stone on the lower slopes, creating a clear visual boundary. The team began conducting drone surveys to capture the summit from multiple angles. The aerial footage revealed something even stranger. The burn pattern was almost perfectly confined to the peak area, with no visible signs of lava flow or surrounding debris fields typical of volcanic eruptions. The terrain below the scorched zone was pristine, untouched by any event that could have caused such an intense burn. This defied all known natural processes. The geologists debated possible explanations, ranging from ancient meteorite impact to unexplained geothermal activity, but none matched the evidence. There was no crater, no signs of molten rock deposits, and no heat source below the mountain. One scientist recalled reading descriptions in ancient texts of a mountain covered in smoke and fire, which some traditions attribute to a divine encounter. While most of the team had dismissed such narratives as myth, the visible, measurable evidence before them forced uncomfortable comparisons. They took rock core samples from both the blackened summit and the unburned lower slopes. Laboratory analysis later confirmed that the summit's rocks had been altered in a way suggesting instantaneous exposure to intense heat, not a slow, natural process. As they continued to explore, they noted how this mountain was isolated from other high peaks in the region, making it a focal point on the horizon. The local Bedouin tribes they encountered referred to it in hushed tones, claiming it was a place of great power and danger. Though the scientists remained committed to objective research, the weight of the evidence gnawed at their skepticism. The burned mountaintop seemed less like a random geological quirk and more like the physical remnant of an event that had been described for thousands of years in religious accounts. What they had thought would be a simple survey was becoming an unshakable mystery that blurred the line between history and legend. The discovery of the massive split rock left the scientists in stunned silence. Rising several meters above the desert floor, the stone was cleaved down the middle in a way that seemed too precise and too clean to be the result of mere erosion. The gap between the halves was wide enough for a person to walk through, yet the two sections aligned perfectly, as though once joined as a single solid formation. What intrigued the team most was the weathering pattern. The interior surfaces of the split were smoother and lighter in color compared to the rough, wind-worn exterior, suggesting that the break was sudden and relatively recent in geological terms. As they examined the base of the rock, they noticed something even more astonishing. There were signs of ancient water flow. Channels had been worn into the stone, extending outward in multiple directions, as if a powerful stream had once burst forth from the fracture. These channels were not faint or ambiguous. They were deep and well-defined, carved into the rock in a way that indicated a sustained and forceful release of water. The desert around them was bone-dry, with no nearby rivers, springs, or aquifers to explain how such a flood could have occurred in this location. The team used ground-penetrating radar to scan the area and found no evidence of underground water sources or modern piping that could explain the markings. It was as if the water had appeared from nowhere, only to vanish again. This aligned eerily with ancient accounts that spoke of water miraculously pouring from a struck rock to sustain people in the wilderness. The sheer size of the split rock also baffled them. Moving or splitting a formation of this scale by natural tectonic forces would normally leave a field of debris or visible fault lines, but there was none. The surrounding terrain was undisturbed, almost as if the rock had been deliberately struck in place by an unimaginable force. Local Bedouins told the scientists that the rock was a place of stories, whispered among elders for generations. They spoke of it as a marker of divine intervention, a sacred sign in the barren land. The researchers, though trained to dismiss folklore, couldn't ignore how perfectly the physical evidence mirrored these ancient traditions. Standing before the towering cleft, they realized they were not simply documenting a geological oddity. They were confronting a relic that might hold the fingerprints of an event recounted in some of humanity's oldest and most enduring narratives. The site of the ancient altar was unlike anything the scientists had ever encountered in the vast deserts of Saudi Arabia. Nestled at the base of a rugged mountain slope, the structure consisted of an arrangement of large, flat stones that seemed too deliberately placed to be the work of nature. The stones formed a low, rectangular platform, and surrounding it were smaller circular enclosures that bore a striking resemblance to ancient animal pens. The ground in and around the area was scattered with countless fragments of charred bone, many of them belonging to sheep, goats, and cattle species that would have been central to sacrificial practices in the ancient world. Detailed examination revealed that the bones were not randomly strewn but concentrated in distinct layers, as though they had been deposited during repeated events over a significant period of time. Carbon dating suggested that these remains were thousands of years old, predating much of the recorded history in the region. Moreover, the burn marks on the bones and stones indicated exposure to high heat, consistent with large open fires or ritualistic burnings. Adding to the intrigue were several carved stone markers located nearby, many engraved with images of bulls and goats. These petroglyphs were simple yet unmistakable, carved deep into the rock faces with tools far cruder than anything used in modern times. The animal imagery was paired with geometric patterns, lines, circles, and grids that appeared symbolic, though their meaning was lost to history. The combination of these carvings and the bone deposits painted a picture of an organized, communal gathering place where animals were brought, sacrificed, and possibly consumed as part of ceremonial rites. The location of the altar matched descriptions from ancient texts that spoke of a sacred site built at the foot of a holy mountain, where offerings were made after a significant divine encounter. The proximity to other remarkable features in the area, the burned mountaintop, the split rock, and inscriptions, suggested a unified historical context, rather than isolated phenomena. What startled the scientists most was how perfectly the evidence aligned with traditions that had long been dismissed by secular scholars as allegorical or exaggerated. Here, in the heart of the desert, was a physical altar large enough to accommodate a gathering of hundreds, surrounded by artifacts and remains that testified to organized worship on a grand scale. For researchers accustomed to separating myth from material fact, the discovery blurred the line between legend and history in a way that left them both unsettled and profoundly curious. The inscriptions found on the weathered rocks near the base of the mountain were unlike anything the scientists had expected to encounter. Etched into the stone with remarkable precision, these carvings depicted a series of scenes that appeared to tell a story. There were figures of people in long robes, some carrying staffs, others standing in postures of reverence or prayer. Alongside these human forms were detailed depictions of animals: camels, goats, cattle, and even what appeared to be serpents and birds. These images were not random or decorative. They seemed to follow a narrative sequence, as though recounting specific events. One of the most striking carvings portrayed a group of figures gathered before a large, jagged shape that closely resembled the mountain itself, with rays or lines emanating from its peak, possibly symbolizing fire or divine presence. Some scholars suggested these could be proto-alphabetic inscriptions, similar to those found in the Sinai Peninsula, which have been linked by some researchers to the earliest Hebrew writing. The depth of the carvings and the erosion patterns suggested great antiquity, with some of the inscriptions estimated to be several thousand years old. Despite centuries of exposure to harsh winds and shifting sands, the images retained a clarity that spoke to the skill and intent of their creators. For the scientists, the implications were profound. These were not random markings left by nomadic tribes passing through the region, but purposeful records, visual testimonies carved in stone to preserve a memory or message. The thematic consistency with ancient accounts of a mass exodus, divine encounters, and supernatural events could not be ignored. The artistry and symbolism suggested a community deeply committed to documenting their experiences, possibly to ensure that future generations would not forget the monumental events that had taken place in this harsh, yet sacred landscape. The discovery challenged the long-held assumption that such stories were purely mythological, offering tangible evidence that the ancient narratives may have been grounded in real, lived history. Satellite imagery played a crucial role in the investigation, offering a vantage point that no ground-based exploration could match. From high above the desolate expanse of the Saudi Arabian desert, patterns and formations began to emerge that were invisible at ground level. The mountain believed to be the real Mount Sinai stood out starkly against its surroundings, its darkened peak distinct from the lighter-colored terrain around it, as though scorched by an intense heat source in the distant past. This bird's-eye view revealed not only the singular nature of the mountain, but also the layout of the surrounding landscape, which bore striking similarities to descriptions found in ancient texts. Adjacent to the mountain, vast open plains stretched out flat, barren areas large enough to accommodate thousands of people, matching the accounts of encampments during the Exodus. Satellite analysis revealed faint outlines of ancient pathways winding through the terrain, their unnatural straightness hinting at deliberate human activity. Some paths appeared to converge at the base of the mountain, reinforcing the idea that this location was once a significant gathering point. Further scans uncovered peculiar rock formations that, from above, aligned in ways suggesting purposeful arrangement. A split rock, towering over its surroundings, could be clearly seen from orbit, with what appeared to be dry streambeds radiating outward as though water had once gushed from its center. The imagery also revealed other anomalies, circular depressions that could have been ancient altars or meeting sites, and rectangular outlines that some speculated might be the eroded remnants of ancient structures or pens for livestock. The use of thermal imaging added another layer of intrigue. Variations in heat signatures indicated subsurface differences, suggesting that the ground in certain areas might conceal buried artifacts or features that had not yet been excavated. The contrast between the scorched mountain peak and the cooler areas around it was particularly striking, fueling speculation about whether this was evidence of a cataclysmic event described in sacred texts. What made the satellite data so compelling was its objectivity. It provided measurable, verifiable information free from human interpretation on the ground. Yet what it revealed aligned uncannily with narratives passed down for millennia. The combination of high-resolution imagery and geological mapping allowed researchers to build a comprehensive picture of the site's potential historical significance. Each detail captured from space added weight to the argument that this location was more than just another desert mountain. It might, in fact, be the very place where a pivotal moment in human spiritual history unfolded. In conclusion, the evidence uncovered in the heart of the Saudi Arabian desert paints a picture too compelling to ignore. From the scorched mountain peak and split rock with traces of water flow, to ancient carvings and pathways visible only from above, every discovery seems to echo the ancient story of the Exodus with startling clarity. The fact that these findings came from atheist scientists, individuals driven purely by evidence, not faith, only adds to the weight of the revelation. Whether one sees it as undeniable proof of sacred history or simply as a remarkable alignment of science and scripture, this discovery challenges us all to rethink what we believe about the past. It bridges the worlds of faith and reason, history and spirituality in a way that demands further exploration. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey into one of the most mysterious and profound discoveries of our time. Your curiosity and open mind are what keep the search for truth alive. Good luck on your own path of exploration, And remember, history still has many secrets waiting to be uncovered. Thank you, and see you in the next chapter of discovery.